Hey guys, so no lesson on polyrhythms this week. I'm going to postpone that until next week while I try to finish it up. But I did want to give you a bit of an update on me and the channel and just what kind of projects are in the works for this year. So I think this is going to be a little bit of a ramble. Don't feel like you need to watch it. This is as much a way for me just to get some thoughts out as it is anything else, but you watch it if you like. So last year was interesting. The year started out with around 35,000 subscribers or so. Slow but steady growth. And as of today, it hit, I think, 135,000. So exponential growth is always fun, always a little bit terrifying. So that happened. And I also started a Patreon last year, and that has slowly but steadily grown month to month. And it's become quite a solid thing at this point, which I'm floored and incredibly grateful for. And those two things together really open up some new opportunities for this year. So the last couple months, I have gone through the painful process of fulfilling obligations and cutting ties and extracting myself out of these different projects and clients that I was involved with. So as of about last week, my day job has become my part-time day job. And the rest of the time will be spent on YouTube. So here's what that means. Around sometime last year, I floated the idea of doing a piano course. I had the idea that it would be nice to have a regular course where we could just do one lesson and then the next and go, regular lessons on mostly one topic and talk about how to play piano because I really like the idea of getting into that. And you guys gave me a ton of feedback on it, and it kind of changed the way I've thought about it. So what I'm thinking now is I'd like to focus on two areas. The first of which would be how to play piano, which is something you guys said you didn't really want. You don't think the world needs another course where, it's here's what the notes are called and here's how you play chopsticks and that kind of thing. And I agree. I don't want to do that sort of thing. But I'm really fascinated with the way people learn. And not just instruments, but almost anything. I play a lot of StarCraft, and it's a very difficult competitive game where it's very easy to see how good you are. You get a ranking. You're in Silver League or you're in Gold League or you're whatever. And it's easy to tell, what things get better over time and what things, don't. And they require you to focus and figure out and analyze and change. And I feel like the education in general does not pay much attention to this, which is a little bit mind-blowing. Back when I used to teach music lessons, it would be really common to have somebody show up, start taking lessons, and they'd come every week and they'd practice, and over the course of a year they'd make some progress. And then you have somebody else show up, same age or whatever, and within 2 weeks they've gotten better than this first person did over the course of a year. They're literally learned 25 times faster or more. And that sounds like kind of crazy, but you just get used to it. Like, you no longer think about it. It just happens all the time, so it's no longer remarkable. And most people, if you ask them, they would just say, well, the second person, they're just talented. They have natural talent. But what is talent? Usually no one knows what they mean by talent, or they'll say, well, talent just means that you get good at things quickly. You're just naturally able to get good. But that essentially means that person got good quickly because they get good at things quickly. It literally doesn't mean anything. So, and obviously the difference between those two people are just the way they mentally approach something. If they're taking guitar lessons and they're trying to learn how to play a difficult chord, how do you get your body to do that thing? How do you solve that problem and make it consistent and accurate? Or if you're trying to learn a song with 1,000 different notes, how do you get those notes into your head and remember them? Like, what technique do you use to do that or to solve that problem? And sometimes it's just random. Sometimes a person just happens to have a better approach. There's a handful of good ways to do it, and there's a lot of bad ways to do it, and they just happen to pick a good one. Other times, they've learned these skills from some other area. They're good at sports, or they're, play games or video games or whatever. But there's some difference in the way they learn and the way they do it. So that is what I would like to focus on. Not so much the how do you play, but how do you learn and how do you do it quickly? If you do have a song you need to memorize, how do you get that into your head in a way that's fun and fast and lets you progress quickly? So that's the first thing. The second area that I'd like to focus on is mostly what you guys said you wanted, which was music theory applied to music. How do you use theory to write things or even understand things that other people have written? Or even just how that applies to learning a song and playing it. But how does music theory apply to music? Now, this is a really hard area to work in. I've done a couple videos that waded into this a little bit. A while ago I did the 4 parts to writing a melody video, and that was the hardest lesson that I've done, but I actually think the best from my perspective, because it gets at that, how do you apply music theory to playing? But it's very few people try to do lessons on that, and I think with good reason. If as soon as you say something specific, like, well, you should use this technique to write, 1,000 people come out and say, well, this famous composer doesn't do that, or this song doesn't use that at all, and this goes completely contrary, and all that stuff is right. But if you follow down that path, eventually you start just saying nothing. Say, well, every note is right and it always sounds good to someone, and just follow your heart and write what you feel. And it winds up being things that you simply cannot act on at all. If you're a new composer starting out and you're going to get good at writing music, you can't just follow your heart. That doesn't mean anything. You can't go in your room and then follow your heart for an hour. That doesn't work. So it's very hard to give concrete instruction or ideas that you can act on, but that also aren't too restrictive, and keep you from being creative and just following a formula. So it's a very hard thing to do, but I do think, and you guys seem to agree, that that is a really valuable thing, and there just isn't much material on that. So I'm expecting those lessons to be a little bit slower because they're so difficult, and I'm expecting to have a lot of back and forth and feedback with you guys about what you think makes sense and what you like to see. But I do really want to work on that because I think it is a really, really valuable area to be working in. So those are the two things I want to be doing, and of course, just the normal theory lessons that I've been doing. There's still plenty of topics that I'd like to work on. Think of it like the more fundamental or core theory kind of thing. So I'll really be working in those 3 different areas. Now, as far as logistics, here's what I'm thinking. I would like to get to where there's a new lesson coming out every week. Now, that is not going to happen right away. Even though I do have a lot more time now, they're still really challenging. But I'm hoping that within a few months I can ramp up and get to where there's a new one every week. I'd like it to be even on a particular day where Thursdays in the afternoon there'll be a new lesson and you can plan your learning music around that. Like I said, it'll be a little while, but that is the goal. And then the other part, originally I had this idea that it would just be a big long course. We start at lesson 1 and then go to lesson 2 and just continue on that way. But I've changed my thinking on that. If you go look at almost any course on YouTube, playing piano or basket weaving or whatever, say there's like 100 lessons in a series. Of the people that start out at lesson 1, it's usually like way less than 1% that get to the end. I mean, it's an abysmal number. And there's a couple reasons. One is that, a lot of people who start something don't necessarily finish it. I mean, you may realize a couple lessons in that this is not a good use of my time and you peace out, and that's what you should do. Like, there's no There's no value to being a completionist. If it's a waste of your time, it's a waste of your time. So that's fine and that's good. But there's a more fundamental problem, I think, and it's that for any topic or any area you're trying to learn in, things don't just organize into these nice sequential facts where one follows the next, and it just goes down the line. I mean, it's not a narrative or a story where one event follows the other. It's just an area where there's lots of different ideas and techniques and things floating around, and you can go spend time working on or studying any one of them. And some of them build on each other and some of them don't. And I think what happens, at least for me, is that you'll be doing a course and you get to some point where you're like, okay, this is not interesting or valuable to me. I don't want to do this. And you just kind of step out and say, all right, well, I guess I'm done with this course. Like, you don't really know where you could come back in. You know, do you jump back in at less than 75 and they're talking about things that you haven't seen yet? Like, you kind of just break the chain and then it's over with and you're done. So what I'd like to do is, you know, for the piano performance, I don't want to call it a course, but for that area, it'll be a long-running theme of something that we work on, but I'd like to organize things into these kind of modules where we do 3 or 5 videos or something, all exploring one particular area, like memorization or playing a scale fluidly or something like that. And then when it's over, it's over. We move on to the next area to spend a few lessons on. And I'll make sure that, you know, I upload them in an order where it makes sense and you can just go from start to finish. But also, if you get to one point and think, this doesn't make sense, I don't care about this particular thing, you can just skip that, get into something else, and not have to worry about it. And obviously, some things do depend on other things, so I'll figure out a way of making that clear. And I feel like it could almost be like a dependency graph. You know, like you get on one area and it'll say, okay, well, you need to know these 2 other things first. So you go look at those 2 things and they'll make it clear what you need to know to learn them. So you can kind of go up the tree and figure out which parts you know and which parts you don't and piece together the information you need to learn some given thing. So that's my thought process for that. And then the one last thing I wanted to mention, just to be thinking about and give me suggestions on if you like, up to now, every piece of instruction that I have done has just been through video, which I think makes sense for music. I think it's very hard to communicate music on paper, which is the reason why I did the video thing in the first place. So this is not the most comfortable thing for me. In fact, getting in front of a camera and monologuing is about the most unnatural thing I have ever done. But I think it's the best way to communicate music, because if you write music down, no matter how you write it, it's very hard to intuitively understand what's happening. But if I have a camera, I can show you, you can hear it. I mean, music is, after all, sound. I can write stuff out, and it's a much easier way to communicate. But the obvious problem is that there's no way of interacting. Well, I mean, there's comments, but that's pretty limited. You know, if you're working with someone one-on-one, you can get there and, like, move their finger around so they have the chord right, or you can, you know, look at what they're doing and point things out. So I'd like to explore ways of working on that obvious missing piece of this online communication method. So I'd like to look at building a website or building, you know, a mobile app or something, or ways of building practice tools, or, you know, things that can give you feedback and are interactive, you know, and that have my philosophy on teaching and that kind of thing. So I'm hoping to work on that at some point as well. So if you have any thoughts on what you might like to see there, let me know. I am a software developer, so that I'm able to do a lot of stuff in that area. So that's the update for 2017. That's the plan. Last call for suggestions and whatnot. You know, if you think, wait, you're totally wrong, don't do that, that's stupid, tell me now before I start down this road. Otherwise, I'll be starting to get this stuff, you know, worked on and laid out, and we'll start getting into these different areas, which I am super excited about. Wouldn't be in this position if it wasn't for you guys, both on just viewership and interacting and watching the videos, or being on Patreon and all that kind of stuff. You guys are really awesome, and it's a cool place to be right now. So let me know what you think, and I will see you next week.